Good evening, and welcome to another week of Tuesday Tales of Terror. I am your host, Santa's little helper, Collie Mortwood, here to guide you through another terrible tale. And I've got a special treat for us, as it is Christmas Eve. Ta-da! I went to the library. If you don't have a library card, 100%. What are you doing? You should get one. You can get books, movies, everything for free. They also have ebooks, audiobooks, graphic novels. They have programs. I have a whole calendar of programs for things that I want to do with my library. And I rented us this book, Christmas and Other Horrors. Wow, the light is really glaring off of that. There you go. Now you can see. Yes, and it's an anthology of seasonal terrible tales, a winter solstice anthology. And so there are a lot of stories in here, not all of them to do with Christmas. Some of them are folk tales from other cultures. And, a couple of them are New Year's tales. So we might just carry over and do a couple New Year's tales and things as well. But to be festive, this evening we are reading The Ghost of Christmases Past. That light is just not doing this book any favors. There you go. Now you can see it. Anyway, this one's written by Richard Kadrey. And it's a little bit of a longer one, so we might be here a little bit longer tonight, but we're just going to stick it out and do it. And I'm kind of excited for it. It's Pepper! Hi, Pepper! Hey, sweetie. If you don't celebrate Christmas, just pretend for this evening that you do. Otherwise, happy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, solstice, Yule. Sure that there's 1,000 that I'm probably forgetting because this is a festive time for all cultures. And without further ado, let us begin. It wasn't the holiday season until, a week before Christmas, the scar on Laura's left arm began to ache. It always started with an itch that grew into a pulsing, burning sensation. Without fail, she'd stare at the crescent-shaped bite mark, the teeth marks still perfectly visible, half expecting the heat to radiate through her skin and turn the scar a bright crimson. But it never happened. If anything, in the 20 years since she'd received the bite, the mark had faded to bone white. Still, she insisted on wearing long sleeves, even in the heat of summer. Every year, Laura and her husband Jordan would put up the same small artificial tree in the living room and top it with the felt and yarn angel that her mother had made when Laura was just a girl. The holiday ordeal didn't end there. They would also go to a Christmas tree lot and select a large wreath for the front door, Jordan holding her anxious hand the whole time. With these grotesque holiday signifiers in place, Laura could relax a little knowing that the house fit in with the neighborhood, so that no one would ask why she spent every holiday locked in seclusion. If they only knew, she thought each Christmas Eve. If only they knew about the shotgun. Are we still going to do the other stuff? Jordan asked wearily from the sofa. It's a holiday tradition, Laura replied. Not a good one. Please. I don't want to have this argument again. I was doing this years before we met, and if I have to do it by myself, I will. Jordan got up and said, Relax. I'm sorry I brought it up. I'll go get the nail gun. With that, Laura and Jordan began the final touches securing the house. They nailed the windows and the basement door shut and made sure the chimney flue was securely closed. A few years earlier, Laura had become nervous that her neighbors might begin to ask questions about all the hammering that went on at her place, so she bought an electric nail gun at Home Depot. Jordan loved using it, and the job, thankfully, went quickly and quietly. It was one of the reasons she'd been drawn to him after so many years of being alone. He knew how to use tools. He was steady where she was not. He listened and he didn't judge. Until recently. Things were changing between them. Things had changed, and the holidays made it worse. When they were done securing the house, Laura and Jordan went to the kitchen for a snack. After a decade of prepping, she knew to lay in a fridge full of their favorite food to get them through the Christmas lockdown. Since they'd finished work in the afternoon, she set out a pot of Earl Grey tea and large slices of fruitcake on the kitchen table. The cake was Laura's one pleasurable concession to the holiday season. Still, she had to choke down the first few bites before she could relax enough to enjoy the snack. Grilla, she remembered, had smelled sweet, like the candied fruit in her cake. It's why she'd let the old witch get close enough to bite her arm that Christmas Eve. The old woman's sweet, reassuring scent. 10-year-old Laura had made that mistake, but 30-year-old Laura would never allow it to happen again. The nailed-up house and shotgun would see to that. As she was finishing the tea, her cell phone buzzed. Laura picked it up to check the caller ID and almost set the phone down unanswered. Taking a breath, she thumbed the button to answer, knowing that if she didn't, Aunt Theodora would keep calling back all day. Better to rip the bandage off the scab now and get it over with, Laura thought. Hi, Aunt Theo. How are you? She said as casually as she could. I'm fine, dear. Just worried about you. I'll never understand why you and Jordan won't ever join the family for Christmas dinner. Laura sighed. It was the same conversation every year. The same deflections and lies. You know how I feel about Christmas, she said. It's not my time of year. I know, said Theo sympathetically. It seems so unfair. You're so good at Christmas. You'll just have to celebrate for all three of us. Theo laughed lightly at that. Okay, I know when I've lost the argument. Again. Did you get the card I sent? Yes, it's lovely. Thank you. Jordan put it next to the tree. How nice. I assume that you're not going to Mass. Laura rubbed her brow, wanting to end the call. I'm afraid not, but I have my rosary fired up and ready to pray penance after the holidays, she lied. I'll light candles for the two of you, dear. And of course, one for Rainer. Even though you're not going to church, you can still light a candle for him too, you know. Laura drew in a breath. It was the same damn thing every year, so she told another lie. Of course, I have a candle for him. I'll light it tonight. Good girl. Please don't forget. I won't. There was a long pause, which surprised Laura because this was usually where Aunt Theo would give up and end the call. But this time the call didn't end. It hung there in silence until Theo said, After all these years, you have to forgive yourself, Laura. There was nothing you could have done. Laura made a face as she felt a stabbing pain in her scar. I know. We've been over this, she said quietly. Rainer's kidnapping, well, you were both children. I thank the Lord every year that you got away with just a scar. Laura fought to keep her voice from getting hard. I know, Aunt Theo, and I appreciate it. You have to forgive yourself, Theo cut in. I'm working on it, I promise. And please don't tell me to go to church and ask God for help. I prayed and prayed after Rainer was gone, and all I got was radio silence. Please don't talk that way, dear. God has a plan for us all. Another twinge of pain in her arm. That doesn't mean we have to like it. I sure as hell don't. And I know Rainer didn't. I'm the one who saw him being dragged away, not any of you. When Theo spoke again, Laura could tell she was crying and felt a small pang of guilt. Oh, my dear, said her aunt. Hey, Aunt Theo, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it like that. Please forgive me. Laura heard sniffling on the line, and Theo said, I'll pray for you. I'll pray for you both, and then hung up. She set her phone down and for a moment considered calling her aunt back. Only what would she say? Would she finally tell Theo the truth, that she'd seen an old witch eat her little brother alive on Christmas Eve? No, that was never going to happen. So she let the phone lie there and sipped her tea, but it had gone cold during the call, so she set the cup and pot in the sink. Theo never gives up, does she? Said Jordan. And she never will. What if, and don't get mad at me, what if she's right? What would be so bad about one Christmas dinner with your family? Don't you get lonely this time of year? I do. That's not the point, said Laura tensely. The doors, the windows, it's just for a few days. I'm not good enough company for a few days. I didn't mean it that way at all. Jordan got up from his chair, but before he could go to her, Laura's phone rang again. Without looking at the caller ID, she thumbed it on and said, Aunt Theo, I'm so sorry I was mean just now. Christmas is so hard. No one answered. The call crackled with static, long seconds of white noise interspersed with crackles and pops. Aunt Theo? Said Laura. The static stopped for a few seconds, then came back loud enough that she had to move the phone away from her ear. Underneath all the white noise was a sound Laura couldn't quite identify. It was a screeching, almost laughing sound, like someone happily torturing an animal. Ooh, that's grisly. Hello? Who is this? She said, and the laugh screech came back louder than ever. Laura thumbed the phone off and dropped it on the table. What was that all about? Said Jordan. Laura didn't answer, but went to the living room and held the shotgun on her lap until she was calm again. Jordan followed, stopping at the kitchen door, just looking at her. I'm not going to end up like Raynor, she said. No, I'm not, you monsters. You've all tried over and over again for 20 years. I beat you every time, and I'll do it again this year, too, she thought to herself. Memories of all the child eaters that had come for her through the years flooded Laura's mind. Old Grilla, Krampus, a Namahag yokai, Jola Katurin, the winter cat, Frau Perkta, a shapeshifter, almost got Laura one year by appearing as one of her friends. There was even the Swiss bastard, Kinlifresserbrunnen, Kinlifresserbrunnen, Kinlifresserbrunnen. Ha! She didn't know why they wanted her, and it didn't matter. She'd beaten them all, staying alive for 20 Christmases while keeping her secret. This year would be no exception. From across the room, Jordan said, You want to put the gun down, babe? You're scaring me. Laura glanced at her watch. It was early enough that the sun was still out. None of the eaters ever came until after dark, so she propped the shotgun on the floor next to the sofa. Thank you, said Jordan. He went to sit with her and spoke quietly. You know, when I saw my therapist last week, I mentioned your condition. There was another shot of pain in Laura's scar, and she turned to glare at him. You're talking about me to your psychiatrist? Of course. You're a big part of my life. We talk about our relationship all the time. No, you're talking about me and Christmas. Jordan nodded. He thinks of these unresolved feelings about Raynor's disappearance. Death, Laura said. He's dead. I know it. You see, it's assumptions like that that worry him and worry me. He gave me the name of a couple other psychiatrists, both women, that he thought that you might want to talk to. Jordan held out a slip of paper that he pulled from his shirt pocket. Laura didn't reach for it. She said, You've been waiting to spring this on me all day, haven't you? Why else would you have their names so handy? I mean, I suppose so. I get so worried. Each Christmas seems worse than the last. I don't know how much more of this you can take. You mean you don't know how much more of this you can take? Jordan set the slip of paper on the coffee table and nodded. I can't stand seeing you like this. Laura stood up and said, if you're planning on leaving me, do it now while it's still light out. I'm not opening any doors after dark. Jordan got up, went to her, and hugged her tight. I'm sorry. It gets to me every year. Nailing the place up, the gun. When are you going to make a mistake and shoot me in the middle of the night? I haven't pulled the trigger once the whole time we've been together, said Laura. Isn't that enough? Jordan let go of her and stepped away. No, it's not. One mistake and it'll be something you can never get away from. Laura looked away for a moment. When she turned back, she gave Jordan a small smile. Would you like to know a secret? Something that no one else knows? He gave her a puzzled look and said, I guess. She walked to him and said, I know Raynor is dead because I saw him die. She killed him. Grilla. Grilla? Grilla. She ate him in front of me, swallowed him right down, but she wanted me. It's why I have her bite mark. Only Raynor hit her, so she took him instead, and she's going to come back. Her or someone like her, the Christmas child eaters. They want me and they'll never stop. So now, you tell me how irrational it is for me to be afraid when I saw my little brother ripped apart and devoured before my eyes. Jordan stared at Laura for a minute, then sat down on the sofa. Oh, he said finally. Laura went and stood over him. Is that all you have to say? I tell you the greatest secret of my life, and all you can say is, oh. Lifting his hand, Jordan let it drop back down onto his lap. I don't know what to say. If you were in my position, what would you say when you hear your partner tell you that a monster ate her kid brother? I'd say, I'm sorry. I'd say, I support you. Jordan took the slip of paper from the coffee table and pressed it into Laura's hand. Laura, after the holidays, please call someone. You need help. Laura stepped back. That sounds like an ultimatum, she said. Go to a shrink or I'm leaving you. I promise you that's not what I meant, but something's got to change. I mean, answer me this. In all the years we've been together, why haven't I ever seen anything strange, any of these eaters? Laura gave him a weary look. Because there's nothing to see. Because I keep them out. Right. Oh, very convenient. No one ever sees the monster because you keep the monsters away. I'm telling you the truth. And I'm not keeping the eaters away. I just don't let them get in. Laura, I want to believe you. It's just so... I'm sorry, but it sounds insane. She stood at the far end of the sofa and shook her head. After a moment, she said, I need a drink. Do you want a drink? Of course you do. A toast and a cheery send-off for your new bachelor life after Christmas. Jordan put his hands to his forehead. Please don't do this. Laura went into the bathroom and then to the kitchen where she poured them both shots of good bourbon, careful to make sure that Jordan got the proper glass. Laura raised hers in a toast. Again, Jordan said, Please don't do this. If you ever loved me, then drink with me now, she replied. Slowly he raised his glass, clinked it against hers, and downed his drink in one gulp. Laura drank hers and sat down behind him on the sofa. Should we watch a movie? She said lightly. Jordan stared at her. Seriously? We're having the most important discussion of our lives and you want to watch a movie? I thought we could both use a break. He leaned back against the sofa and said, Sure, fine, whatever. But you need to call one of the numbers my psychiatrist gave me. Of course, dear. A Christmas Carol is on. The one with Alistair Sim. Shall we watch it? Jordan waved a hand at the screen. It's your party. Laura turned on the movie. It was already at the Ghost of Christmas Past sequence where Scrooge saw the happiest and most miserable moments of his life. Laura watched intently and poured them more drinks during a commercial break. By the time Scrooge awoke on Christmas Day, Jordan was blinking and shaking his head. Ugh, I don't Feels so good, he said. Don't worry, it'll pass, Laura answered. What do you mean? Remember the oxycodone the doctor gave me after my hip surgery? I had some left over, so I put it in your drink. Jordan lurched unsteadily to his feet. You did what? He said. I have to leave. Laura shook her head. You can't in your condition. You'll crack your head on the ice before you make it to the garage, and you certainly can't drive. Plus, by the time you sober up, it'll be night and it's too late then. I'm not opening the door, so you'll just have to stay. Jordan took another step away from her and almost fell over. Why would you do that? So you'll stay. I'm going to let the eater in this year so you can see. Then you'll know I'm not crazy. But you are crazy, said Jordan, dropping down into an easy chair across the room. I know it now. Laura picked up the shotgun and put it on the sofa where he'd been sitting. Getting up, she took a blanket from under the coffee table and draped it over Jordan in the easy chair. You rest up now. It's going to be a long night. Afterward, she went back to the sofa and channel surfed as Jordan half floated, half napped the afternoon away. Around 10 that night, Laura grew tired of the Christmas nonsense on TV and muted it. Jordan still lay like a heap on the easy chair. What a lightweight, she thought. She called to him. How are you feeling? It's still fucked up. You never could hold your drugs. Remember that time we tried Molly and you cried all night? Jordan struggled to get up. Laura, please, let me go. No. I left one way in. You have to see. See what? There's nothing out there, he shouted. Laura put a finger to her lips. Quiet. Did you hear something? Only your bullshit. She sat very quietly. After a moment came the faint sound of scratching, first on the windows, then the front door. Laura picked up the shotgun and looked through the peephole. There was nothing outside but a snowy sidewalk. The scratching resumed, this time behind her. She ran to the nailed-shut basement door and listened. Nails or talons raked along the door and crept around the bottom, trying to claw through. The house quieted for a moment, and she let out a long breath. Then a loud crash came from the basement door, so intense that she almost dropped the shotgun. Something had thrown its body against the door and is now doing it over and over again, so that the sound shook the house. The wood around the hinges and nails splintered a little, but they held, and the door didn't buckle under the blows. Finally, the sound stopped, and Laura thought that she could hear footsteps going back down the basement steps. When the door was quiet again, she ran to the living room and shook Jordan's shoulder. Did you hear that racket? Now tell me I'm crazy. He looked at her blearily. I didn't hear anything. Yes, you did. A sound came from above her, the rhythmic thumping of someone running across the roof. Now tell me you didn't hear anything, she shouted. Jordan tried to stand. Just you screaming. Let me go, I'm feeling better. She pushed him back down onto the chair. You're not going anywhere until this is finished. Laura knew that there was only one logical place large enough for someone to get inside from the roof, and that was through the chimney. However, the flue was shut, and she knew that the eaters didn't operate through logic. They operated through hunger. Still, she waited until the gun grew heavy in her hands. From the kitchen came a sharp, metallic pop, then another. She ran from the fireplace and turned on the kitchen light in time to see the aluminum vent above the oven distort and expand, like a silver throat trying to choke something down. This was it. This was finally it. The place she'd left open, the trap she'd set. Which eater would it be? It would have to be a small one to fit through the oven vent. An idea came to her. Laura set the shotgun down on the kitchen table, and as the vent over the oven distended and throbbed, she turned on all the burners. Then she ran back and grabbed the gun. Something alive in the vent shrieked. Great screams and the sound of metallic kicks filled the house. A voice came to her. It screamed, "Help me, Laura!" She ran back to the living room for Jordan and found him half sitting in the chair, trying to pull himself up. "Do you hear it now?" screamed Laura. He nodded. "I do. What is it?" Laura grabbed his arm and pulled him into the kitchen, shoving him against the wall so he wouldn't fall. "Look," she said. "Look at that and call me crazy." Something like a black bubble hung from the oven vent. It slowly pulsed inward and outward like it was breathing. The smell of singed fabric and flesh filled the room. Then, with one more kick and a muffled howl, the thing oozed out and onto the oven in one glistening Icarus mass and began to scream, even as the liquid flesh flowed slowly onto the linoleum floor. The ragged clothes it wore burned and smoldered. It was roughly the shape of a man, but its slug-like body was pooled at strange angles. Slowly, however, the burned figure began to pull himself back into human shape. Laura didn't hesitate. She pulled the trigger of the shotgun and missed, blasting a jagged hole in the kitchen floor. The gun's kick knocked her backwards, and by the time she was steady again, the slug man was gone. She ran into the hall beyond the kitchen, but it was empty. Swinging the barrel back the way she'd come, all she saw was Jordan in a corner of the kitchen with his hand out before him. "Please don't shoot me," he shouted. Laura ignored him and crept into the living room. When the slug man ran off, he seemed much bigger than Laura had expected. When she went into the living room, she did it looking for a tall man. It didn't occur to her that he'd expect that and sat crouched by the door. The moment she set a foot in the room, he sprang and swung a fist into the side of her head. Stunned, she dropped the shotgun and it went off, shattering the TV. Before she could react, the slug man grabbed her by the hair, threw her to the ground, and kicked her once in the stomach. "Stay down there till I say you can get up," he said. The pain in Laura's scar burned her like never before. Even after being punched and kicked, it was the one sensation she truly felt. Still on the floor, she turned her head and watched the slug man pick up the shotgun and point it at her. "All right, get up," he said. "I didn't kick you that hard." Trembling, Laura braced herself on the sofa and pulled herself to her feet. When she was upright, she finally got a look at the man. His hair was wild, greasy, and matted. He was filthy, and his clothes and skin were scorched almost black, though the worst thing about him was his face and the shredded holes where his eyes should be. "Oh!" After a minute, he said, "Hello, Laura." Something awful turned over in her mind, a long ago memory. She said, "Rainer?" He smiled bleakly. "I wasn't sure you'd remember." He ratcheted the shotgun several times, ejecting the shells, and when it was empty, he set it down. "You're my eater?" said Laura. "Did Grilla do this to you?" Rainer leaned back against the wall, leaving a dirty smudge where he touched it. "Grilla," he said. "I'm glad you still remember her. I knew you had to. I would have beaten you bloody if you'd have denied it." Confused and scared, Laura leaned heavily against the sofa. "She ate you. I saw it. How are you here?" "That's all you remember? Nothing else?" "What else is there? It was, it was horrible." The brows over his hollow eye sockets raised a fraction of an inch. "Oh, it was horrible. More horrible to feel than to watch, I assure you. You really don't remember the rest of it, do you?" "What? What else is there to remember?" Rainer shot forward from the wall, grabbed Laura by the shoulders, and shook her. "How you held me for her," he said between clenched teeth. "You held me in front of her, in front of you, the whole time, so she'd eat me instead." Laura shook herself from his grasp. "No, she bit me, and you hit her. That's why she attacked you." "Bit you?" said Rainer. He laughed. "Ha ha ha ha! Those are my teeth marks in your arm. I bet you trying to get away when she was swallowing my guts." "No, no, no," said Laura. The scar in her arm burned, and when she touched it, her mind was swept back to a dark room 20 years earlier. A sweet smell in the air, a hungry old woman with Rainer between them. He never cried out once. The old witch kept a tight hand across his mouth. Laura crouched behind Rainer, trying to stay out of the hag's eye line. grinding her teeth to keep from screaming as Raynor bit her arm to get away. "No, it wasn't like that," she said. "It was exactly like that. But you know what the worst part was? It was the last thing I saw before she finished me off. She pulled out my eyes and she gave them to you. 'Eat these, my child,' she said. 'Eat these and be like me, or join the little squire in my belly.' No, that's a lie. And you ate them." "No!" "I could still see you, you know. That was part of her magic. I watched you take my eyes from her hands and swallow them down in one gulp." Laura's head swam and she fell to her knees. Her brow was cool and sweaty when she put her hand there, and there was something else wrong with her face. Her cheeks and her jaw felt strange. "You lie to yourself every Christmas," Raynor said. "Leave yourself a secret exit through the nailed doors so that when Jordan's asleep, you can go out and feed." Tears formed in Laura's eyes. "No, it's a lie." Raynor reached down and pulled her from the floor. "Every year you nail yourself up and tell yourself it's from the monsters. But you're the monster, and what's been trying to get inside all this time is me." "Why?" Raynor shrugged. "I can't move on. You have my eyes. I need them to see my way to the next place." As he said it, the memory of the night came back stronger than ever. All that he said was true, holding him, hiding behind him, swallowing his eyes. "Oh, God," she said, and then looked at him. "I'm sorry, I can't give you your eyes back. I ate them." He put a hand out toward her face. "Then let me have yours." "I can't. I need them." "To hunt," said Raynor. Laura's head felt tight, and she could hear her pounding heartbeat. When she put a hand to her face, something was very wrong. Turning her head to a mirror on the wall, it took her a moment to understand that the face she was looking at was hers. She looked so much like Grilla, though not quite. It was as if they had spawned a child together, a subtle mixture of them both. Laura opened her mouth and admired her rows of razor-sharp teeth. "Every year?" she asked. "Every year," Raynor replied. Laura laughed a little. The lies children tell themselves. Her brother approached her again. "I want your eyes," he said, more insistently. "You can't have them," she said, and shoved him away. "But I have others." Raynor frowned. "Others?" There was a sound from the kitchen, and Jordan lurched into the living room, swinging a frying pan at Raynor's head. He dodged it easily, and Laura slapped Jordan to the floor. Her husband looked up at her, his eyes still a little unfocused. "Laura?" She looked from Jordan to her brother and said, "I don't have your eyes anymore, but I do have a spare set around. Please let me have them. Any eyes will do," he said pleadingly. Laura knelt beside her husband. He blinked at her a few times. "What's wrong with your face?" Jordan asked. "Did he hurt you?" "He didn't," she said. "I understand now, and no one will hurt me again. Or call me crazy." Laura grabbed Jordan and twisted his head until there was a loud crack. As he lay limply on the floor, she knelt beside him and used her talon-like nails to pluck out each of his eyes. When she was done, she stood and gave them to Raynor. Her brother eagerly pushed the orbs into the empty sockets in his face and laughed. "Oh, man, it's been so long," he said, and looked at Jordan. "These eyes were his? Who is he?" Laura prodded her husband's body with the knee of her shoe. Laura prodded her husband's body with the toe of her shoe. "Just some man. I thought I knew him. Sadly, it turns out I didn't. Should have never let him in." Raynor stepped forward and gave his sister a brief hug. "Thank you. I'm going now. You won't ever see me again." Laura took his hand and squeezed it. "Safe travels," she said, and wrenched the front door open with strength that surprised her. Raynor stood in the open door for a moment and said, "What will you do now that you don't have me to be afraid of anymore?" Not really sure. I only know one thing. What's that? I'm very hungry. Goodbye, Laura. Goodbye, Rainer. She locked the door after her brother left and went back to Jordan's body, which she ate quickly and ravenously. But she wasn't sated, not at all. She needed more. At midnight, she crept quietly across the rooftops of homes nearby, knowing that if any children heard her coming, they'd think her light footfalls were Santa's reindeer come to bring them Christmas cheer. The end. Ah! Spooky! It really was in her head because she was the monster the whole time. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. Well, my friends, our time together has come to an end. I will not haunt your halls any longer. I will let you go and be festive, merry, jolly, and gay in the best way. I hope that you have a safe and merry holidays. And I will see you next week, which is New Year's Eve. Aren't we so lucky to get to spend these evenings together? Stay safe, stay spooky, a little love, a little peace. Ciao for now.